Das Robot-Image hat Kraftwerk weltberühmt gemacht und natürlich die Autobahn. Kraftwerk will in diesem Herbst eine große Tournee durch Deutschland machen. Und jetzt ein Konzertausschnitt mit dem Titel Taschenrechner.
Hiya! Welcome! It's Records Roundup number 21, and as you can see from the thumbnail and the intro, it's a very special edition today, as I'm going to show you a collection that I started probably a little over 2 weeks ago, and my intentions was that I was just going to collect these coloured vinyl reissues from this act quite slowly over the course of the first part of this year. And I just couldn't resist and ended up shopping round and getting all 8 of the albums that I wanted. I'm of course talking about the band in question being Kraftwerk, the German electro-pop pioneers themselves. Kraftwerk are a band, if you can call them a band, a group, and the first album I'm going to show you is just toppling over a bit down below me. But they're an act who I've been threatening to start a collection in for quite a long time now. I was going to do it last year, but I concentrated on other parts of my record collection. I thought to myself, sort of around Christmas, coming up for New Year time, I really want to get this Kraftwerk collection off and running in January. And it's kind of begun and not ended because, well, we'll talk about maybe other things that I may get relating to this particular collection in my record library towards the end, but I'm really excited. I've got 8 Kraftwerk albums to show you today. They're all remasters and reissues from 2020 on coloured vinyl to keep the video going and to save me just sort of standing around with a knife for most of the video. I'm just going to put up pictures that I found of all the records so that you can see which colour variants they are exactly. Some of the photos are better quality than others. I didn't take them, they were ones I found on Discogs, but it'll give you a good idea of what each disc looks like. So yeah, Kraftwerk, this is their 2020 coloured vinyl reissue campaign. They did have 3 albums that came out before the first album that I'm going to show you. It would have been the self-titled Kraftwerk, there's follow-up Kraftwerk 2, and the 3rd studio album, Ralph und Florian. But those have not been reissued for a long time from what I can see on Discogs. I know that they're quite different from the first album that I'm going to show you, which will be Kraftwerk's 4th studio album, and the one that really not only sort of established them as sort of a pioneer and a leader in electronic music, but it was really their international breakthrough. But I'd like to see those albums get reissued. I know they're going to sound quite different because they're going to be more sort of towards experimental krautrock rather than electronic pop and everything else that you associate with sort of peak Kraftwerk. But let's get going and show you the first album. And I'm going to do this in the order in which these albums were originally released. I've bought all these records from different websites, so they're not in any order of where I got them from, but they're in the order of when they would have been originally released, I think. And more's falling down as I've got them sort of propped precariously below me. So here's the first one, but this is Kraftwerk's 4th studio album and their breakthrough album, I think you'll agree, Autobahn. This will be on blue vinyl, and there's not going to be an awful lot for me to really talk about regarding these. I've not listened to any of them yet. I've heard quite a few Kraftwerk tracks over the years and off certain albums, but the majority of this music's going to be a new experience for me. But I'm just really excited to do a proper deep dive into an act who I know have influenced a lot of my very favourite acts and bands over the years. New Order and Joy Division always wore their Kraftwerk fandom on their sleeves, I think, you know, Rammstein, you can even say, although them being industrial metal, they are quite different, but they use a lot of electronic sounds, and they even covered a Kraftwerk song, Das Model, in the 1990s. It's got a hype sticker on here, special edition coloured vinyl. That's the English language hype sticker. Now, I've collected all the German language Kraftwerk albums here where possible. This and another one I'll get onto later is an exception, simply because this one I think only ever came out in the German language. I mean, you can tell it's German language when you look at the track details on the back. Whereas from the second one of these, their fifth album onwards, they began releasing dual language editions, and I wanted to be authentic and collect the German language ones. But this one was only ever out in the German language anyway. But it does have the English language hype sticker, which I think is just standard for if you buy this within the United Kingdom. If I'd ordered this from Germany or somewhere else in Europe, it may have come with the German hype sticker, I don't know. That's the only language-wise, the only edition of Autobahn you can get. And this one is from 1974, but of course, as I say, all of these are reissues from late 2020. Kraftwerk, their fourth album, Autobahn. They followed up Autobahn with this one here, Radioaktivat, or Radioaktivat. I do apologise for some of my German pronunciations here. More familiar in English language as Radioactivity. So this is the first of what will be 6 Kraftwerk albums here, where I had the option of buying either the German language one or the English one. There'll be some, no doubt, hardcore Kraftwerk fans out there who insist on both editions. I'm not going to go that far. You know, I listen to a lot of German language music for obvious reasons, and I wanted the German language Kraftwerk where possible. And the German language editions have generally tended to be a little bit more expensive overall, but it's dependent on where I've shopped. I've shopped around for these over the course of sort of about nearly 3 weeks, really. Is there much on here that I'm familiar with? Not an awful lot, to be honest. There you can see all the tracks on here. This will be, I think this is some sort of yellow vinyl, maybe neon or transparent. You'll see from the photo that I've put on screen. Can't really talk an awful lot about the music, really. This is just me showing a collection that I've started, and in the case of these Kling Klang digital remasters, Kling Klang being Kraftwerk's label / studio, it's a complete collection as well. Next up, from 1977, is Trans-Europa Express. In English, of course, Trans-Europe Express. Another, feels to me anyway, and any hardcore Kraftwerk fan out there can correct me if I'm wrong, but this feels like another kind of international breakthrough, really. As I did know Trans-Europe Express, the single, the title track on the album. You know, I think they're really coming into their own at this point as, you know, strictly an electro-pop group, an electro-pop act. I do like the Kling Klang globe logo there. It reminds me of Universal Pictures logo. I don't know if it's meant to be some sort of tribute or parody to it, I'm not sure. All of these album sleeves, by the way, I think the vast majority of them are quite noticeably different from the original album sleeves. I don't want to bombard people with loads of photos of things in this video when I'm putting quite a lot up anyway. But if you want to see some of the original covers for these albums back from the 70s and 80s, then Discogs is a good place to go. Wikipedia will have them, and no doubt other sites as well. Trans-Europa Express. Oh, and this one I think's on clear vinyl, by the way. This is one of the two that actually came today from Vinyl Tap, but I'm going to show it you in this sort of chronological order, obviously. And yeah, this is one where there's some real familiar stuff for me. It's Die Mensch Maschine, in English, The Man Machine, from 1978. and it's got Die Roboter, which is the robots, which I don't know if that came out as a single in the 70s, but it definitely came out as a single in the early 90s, and I can get onto that a little bit more later on. Once again, it's got the German hype sticker, as most of these have. This is going to be on red vinyl. Also, Das Model. I love Rammstein's cover of that. Probably like it more than the Kraftwerk original, to be honest. The title track, I'm a big fan of, Die Mensch-Maschine. Amazing melody in that. This is one of the ones I'm most excited about. I'm excited to listen to them all, obviously. Die Mensch-Maschine. We're moving to the 80s now, and this is an album that was originally released in 1981, known in English as Computer World, but in the German language, Computer Welt. Once again, it's on coloured vinyl. You know what you're getting now, I think, really. It's these really nice reissues. I think all of these have got like a nice booklet inside as well, probably with mostly high quality photos, so that's going to be nice to look through them as I'm listening to the music as well. Look on the back. Obviously a real sort of audio essay, if you will, on the rise of home computing in the early 80s here. Once again, this is the German language edition, so it's got stuff like Computer Liebe, which will be computer love, Heimcomputer, which is home computer. The final track on here is in English. It's more fun to compute, but presumably that was just recorded as an English language, or it might be an instrumental. I'm not sure, I've not heard it before. And this will be on some sort of yellow vinyl as well. Computer Welt, or Computer World.
Ich bin der Musikant mit Taschenrechner in der Hand. Ich bin der Musikant mit Taschenrechner in der Hand.
Three more to go, and this is the final 1980s album from Kraftwerk, and it is techno pop. As you can see, the site where I bought it from, which I believe was Relevant Records, has assured me that this is the German language version that I deliberately wanted. Originally this album was called Electric Cafe. I'm not sure why they changed it in more recent years, changed the title. I think Techno Pop is the name of a track on here, although there's also a track called Electric Cafe on here as well. But Techno Pop, I think, was the original working title for this, and then they decided to change the name from Electric Cafe to that in more recent years. Not an awful lot on here that I'm familiar with, I don't think. Might have heard Music Non-Stop before, possibly even Sex Object, who were on clear vinyl, I believe this is. If I'm getting any of these wrong relating to how the discs look, then you'll see the right ones on screen anyway. The penultimate one is one that I think Kraftwerk themselves and their fans do technically class it as a studio album, but it's really sort of like a kind of almost greatest hits, but re-recorded and remixed greatest hits. It is this one called The Mix. There again, this one came out in dual English language and German versions. I've got the German version here, and I can tell that because of the German language track titles on the back. This is the first 2-disc, 2 LP Kraftwerk set out of all these. And I mentioned Die Roboter, which would have been off the Mensch machine earlier on. That was remixed and re-recorded and released as a single in 1991 when this album came out. That's why I'm quite familiar with that track. So I remember The Robots, as it would have been known over here, getting into the chart in the early 90s. And it's got other stuff that either the title of it's familiar or I've actually heard it before, like Computer Liebe and Trans-Europa Express, which I know. Autobahn, the title track of the first album I showed you, their fourth album, is on here as well. So re-recordings, remixes, but I think in the Kraftwerk canon, they do class this as like its own studio album, which is fair enough. Really excited to hear that, as I'm excited to hear it all. And finally, Kraftwerk nerds and nuts will know what's left. It's this one, which is to date their final studio album, Tour de France, originally known as Tour de France Soundtracks, but just renamed or shortened to Tour de France when reissued. This was out in originally 2003, another 2-disc edition this, I think it's a blue disc and a red disc you'll see on screen. And this, like Autobahn, is not a dual language edition. Everything on here, from what I've read, was a mixture of English language, German language and French language anyway, and they didn't release a separate edition with just one or two of the other languages, so this was just the one I could choose from. And also this one has come with the English language hype sticker, but if you get this one and it's got the German language sticker on it, it's still going to be the exact same album, because as I say, it's just this one trilingual edition, if you will. Tour de France, the single, originally came out, I think probably getting on for 20 years or more before this album came out, but it was re-recorded for this 2003 album, and then there's other cycling and Tour de France related stuff that was brand new for 2003 on here as well. That is Tour de France by Kraftwerk, completing the Kraftwerk 2020 coloured reissues, mostly German edition. And that's all the Kraftwerk to show you today. Hope you've enjoyed a little look at all these albums that I've added to the collection. I'm so looking forward to getting stuck into all this Kraftwerk. I mean, they've just been so influential for me as a music fan, really, just from who they've influenced, who I've listened to pretty much all my life. The fact that I'd never owned a Kraftwerk album until recently, I thought was a little bit shameful, given my love of dance music, European pop and electro and things like that. Kraftwerk, really, they influenced all kinds of artists over, you know, their 50 plus years in the business, and they're still influencing people today. Is there any more Kraftwerk that I would like to get? Well, aside from the early albums, the Krautrock era Kraftwerk, that I don't know if and when that'll ever get reissued. I know the originals will probably be fairly easy to find, but I've not really looked for them. There's other stuff, there's like live stuff, a remix album that I keep seeing recommended to me. So you never know, I'm sure I may add more Kraftwerk that's perhaps not quite as essential as all these studio albums here into the collection in the future, but this was the main thing, to get these 8 albums, these cling clang digital remasters here. I want to say thank you for watching, and I want to say a special thanks as always to my subscribers and my generous and wonderful patrons. Don't forget my JB2K contest, it's still got a little bit of time left to run till February the 2nd. Please see the link at the very top of the description to enter that, and you can win yourself a grand prize of £50, or if you're the runner-up, you get £25. It's very simple. Click on the video, subscribe to the channel, and have a look, and you'll see how easy it is to enter JB2K and possibly win some money in your back pocket. I'm gonna go now, and what else am I gonna do but listen to Kraftwerk? That's all I can say, really. I think I've done well kind of padding this video out to this length without really knowing an awful lot about individual tracks and about the processes behind the albums and the releases and everything like that. When you start a new collection and it's an act who you've liked and you've listened to kind of intermittently over your lifetime, but you've never really investigated deeply, you do start off, as I've done here today, kind of a little bit shallow, really, but hopefully in the weeks and months to come, as I listen to these records and really absorb the amazing sounds of Kraftwerk, I'll become a firm and rather more knowledgeable fan in due course. And I do hope that all of you will join me again next time for my next records roundup and record collecting video. Cheers, everyone. See ya!